Yeah. Well, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell criticized President Biden's handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, saying, quoting here, "Terrible things happen when terrorists are allowed to operate freely. This murderous attack offers the clearest possible reminder that terrorists will not stop fighting the United States just because our politicians grow tired of fighting them." Joining me now to react, Director of the National Security Law and Policy Program at George Mason University and former Chief Counsel and Senior Advisor for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Jamil Jaffer. It's always great to have you, sir. I mean, Mitch McConnell makes a fair point there. You know, you see these terrorist attacks, and does it give you pause? Do you think that we're going to see more terror attacks against U.S. interests, possibly even in this country?
Well, unfortunately, I do think that is a serious possibility. With the Taliban taking over control of Afghanistan, the same group, by the way, that hosted Osama bin Laden in the lead up through the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, we can expect that ISIS, Khorasan, which challenges the Taliban, but also shares interests with them against the United States, is going to return to that region. Al-Qaeda will return, and they will once again use Afghanistan as a base for plotting, not just against Americans here in the United States, but against Americans abroad and our allies in Europe.
Yeah, and the Wall Street Journal editorial board writes this in part, I'm reading here, "The Kabul airport massacre compounds the humiliation of the botched Afghan withdrawal and will further embolden jihadists." Mr. Biden is telling Americans that Afghanistan won't again become a terror haven, but it already is. The hundreds of jihadists released from prisons with the Taliban victory are already on the attack. More Americans will become targets and far beyond the borders of Afghanistan. Is that a fair assessment on the Wall Street Journal's part?
I think that's right. I mean, even worse, the terrorists are actually in charge of security in the capital itself. The Haqqani network is very closely aligned with the Islamic State and with the Islamic State of Khorasan. And so this idea that the terrorists aren't going to be there, they are there now. And let's not forget, the Taliban itself is a terrorist group. They're the ones who hosted bin Laden. And when the U.S. said, turn him over, they refused to do that because he was their guest on the day he plotted that attack that killed nearly 3,000 Americans in New York, Washington, D.C., and Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so Jamil, tell us how this works. I mean, you're on the ground. You have ISIS-K now active in Afghanistan. If you have al-Qaeda coming back, we know that al-Qaeda and the Taliban are very close. What's the alliance situation there? I mean, it's a very tribal nation. What happens on the ground? Are you having terrorist attacks? Are there civil war? What's the dynamic on the ground in your sense?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's all of the above. They will fight one another, but while we're there, they're going to fight us. And one of the things that they're all aligned around is going after all the people that supported us. So all of our Afghan allies, all the American citizens, the green card holders that are still in that country that are having a challenge getting out. You've got great groups here in the United States, groups of veterans, human rights groups, Allied Airlift 21 that I'm working with, trying to get American green card holders, our Afghan allies out. And we're not going to get them all out as we leave that country rapidly. And that's going to be a real problem because that the Taliban, ISIS-K, and al-Qaeda are all looking for our people and the people who worked with us.
Yeah, and I guess the question remains, and we should, by the way, point out that the evacuation airlifts have begun again at Kabul airport. We are expecting, hopefully, to get thousands more out today, but, the deadline is fast approaching. It's now the 27th in Afghanistan. We've got about 4 days left before the Taliban expects everybody to be gone, and the president today once again reinforced that August 31st deadline is, in fact, solid, and he wants everyone out of the Kabul airport by the 31st. The question remains to you, Jamil, what happens to the people who are left after that? The Americans and our Afghan allies, what happens to them post-August 3-1?
Well, I'm deeply concerned about the situation of our American citizens who will still be there, American green card holders who are having a hard time getting to the airport, getting into the airport, and our Afghan allies. I mean, there are thousands of people who worked as interpreters interrogating the Taliban, al-Qaeda, the Islamic State in Khorasan. All these folks worked with the Taliban, know who they are. We know who they are. It's our responsibility to get them out. If we don't do that, we'll lead them to a very, very bad fate. And that's not a good situation for us, and it's a terrible situation for them. So, groups like Allied Airlift 21, the entire Afghan evac effort, with the whole group of Americans here working feverishly, are going to continue to work, whether the U.S. government is there or not. But it becomes a very difficult mission once the U.S. leaves. Yeah,
and the catch-22 is that, we're telling American citizens, don't come to the airport. We're trying to get them out of there. We got 4 days to get them out of there, and we're telling them, don't come. Don't come because it's dangerous. Well, and so the thing is, I think the best thing people can do is for American folks who have friends and allies there, who've got their interpreters there, have them register on these websites. You've got, as I said, Allied Airlift 21, a number of other websites. Get them to register so at least we know who they are. We can work with the State Department. We can work with the Department of Defense and do what we can to get them out in this limited time we have left. And then to the extent they're still there, we can work to get them out. But, it's critical that we do the right thing. As everyone's been saying so far, we got to put the politics aside. We have a very tough situation on the ground right now, right? And forget who's responsible for it. We need to get those people out and to safety. And that's the most important mission right now. Boy, you got that right. That is the most important mission. Jamil Jaffer, it's always great to have you, sir. Thanks for the insight. We appreciate it. Thanks for having me.